In this video, I'm going to talk about the 3 levels of abstraction in Taemin's Never Gonna Dance Again series. The first is Taemin's actual life experiences, which we see in some of Criminal's imagery. The second is Plato's theory of ideas, as Taemin has mentioned in interviews. And the third, I believe, is Greek mythology. Let's start with Two Kids. Two Kids is the story of 2 young children who once loved each other, but ended up breaking apart due to their youth and innocence. In this prologue, Taemin is, in his words, young and dumb, and he has lost something really dear to him. There's nothing too unrealistic happening in this video, but it might be important to note that he 1. Sinks into the ground, and 2. He ends the song on his knees. Act 1 albums and mood samplers had 2 versions, Suspect and Innocent. The Suspect version showed Taemin in red prowling through the woods at night with wolf imagery. It seems like he is the wolf hunting something. But the Innocent version shows Taemin in a closed room, resigning himself to imprisonment with the statue of a female. Here I'd like to introduce the myth of Ariadne. First of all, Ariadne was the daughter of King Minos and the brother of the Minotaur. She was sometimes called the Mistress of the Labyrinth, associated with snakes, weaving, and spiral dancing. When one of the sons was murdered, King Minos ordered the state of Athens to send 7 young boys and 7 girls to his palace as sacrifices for the Minotaur. Ariadne was in charge of the prisoners, which is why they were bound by cloth or thread throughout the MV. Theseus, an Athenian hero, was sent as one of the prisoners to the labyrinth, and Ariadne, having fallen in love with him, gives him thread and a sword to help him escape the labyrinth. Okay, so Criminal starts with 2 chairs in lava, with Taemin alone in the middle. We can assume that these 2 chairs were meant for Taemin and the person or thing that he lost in Two Kids. Taemin is covered in a red cloth, showing that his vision is clouded in red. If you look closely, the TV screen in the middle shows Taemin in the mannequin shop, staring back at him. I believe that this Taemin that doesn't wear an eye patch is Ariadne, the master of dance, because he stands above the labyrinth like he's above it, and because he's shown with a small gold sword, which we will see later in the MV. This sword is given to another Taemin, who represents Theseus. The choreography starts with Taemin and 6 others on their knees with their hands bound. The statue behind them shows 7 men and 7 women with cloth weaving around them. Altogether, they represent the 14 young sacrifices that were sent to the labyrinth. The dance starts with Taemin saying, "I don't hate how your words make my feet entangled and dance," which could be literal or metaphorical. But since Ariadne is well known for her dancing, and the dancing floor that Daedalus built for her above the labyrinth, which you could read about on your own, we could consider that Taemin is literally being forced to dance, and he enjoys it. "I don't want to deny the truth that it was destined to be you from the beginning." This could reflect on how his profession suited him and his qualities so well from such a young age. In the choreography, as he says criminal, he moves his hand in a snake-like fashion, representing Ariadne and the labyrinth. The next set is a vintage mannequin shop that sells female, male, kid mannequins, which, as you may realize, is a body sculpture without a head. It also sells them as unique models with perfect details, and has an incredibly luxurious interior. You may be seeing where this is going now. If the mannequin business is symbolic of the idol industry, Taemin suffocating himself shows the moment he chooses to become a mannequin, killing his original identity so that he can continue to dance. The crows surrounding his body represent the people waiting to profit on his death. The other scenes show this in several different ways. In the choreography scene, eye-patched Taemin dances what he calls the dead person dance, which he describes in the dance tutorial if you want to check that out. The Taemin in the shop is now bound by a red scarf with a gold knife in his hand. This Taemin is the dead Taemin who is about to be a mannequin, and the gold knife is basically the sword given to him by Ariadne, symbolizing a way out of his situation that he doesn't use. Next, the chainsaw Taemin appears, showing that his head is about to be cut off. Let me take a moment here to summarize Plato's allegory of the cave. Suppose prisoners are taken not from birth, but still young enough, and bound in a dark cave with a fire behind them. There are people making shadows with items and puppets, but the people themselves are hidden behind a wall. Therefore, the prisoners live their entire lives only seeing the shadows on the wall and hearing the voices of the people, believing they're coming from the shadows because of the cave's echo. Symbolically, The people behind the fire represent people in society that control knowledge or politics, and the fire is a sort of fake information. The entire cave represents everything that traps all of humanity from the truth. This next image is a huge turning point in Taemin's story. Taemin, with his eyes closed, bound to the statue by cloth, is literally Taemin entering the labyrinth, but symbolically his attachment to his career being set in stone. Like I mentioned before, I believe that there are 3 levels of abstraction happening, and the third is Plato's allegory of the cave, which Taemin has mentioned in an interview. The moment is also the moment that Taemin becomes the prisoner in the cave, only able to see shadows on the wall in front of him. Remember here that the 14 kids that were taken captive in the myth are young, the prisoners in Plato's allegory are young, and Taemin became an SM trainee at the age of 11. Young. Insane, right? So the next set is completely black and white, like the colorless shadows in the cave. There is nothing but white walls and black speakers and amplifiers representing the talking shadows in the allegory. There's also a short scene with green lighting and people's hands distorting the screens on either side of him, which is related to NGDA. But for now, if we assume Taemin can't see green light, then he's completely blinded, only able to make sense of the creepy screens with his hands. I know it seems kind of random, but bear with me. There's a lot of levels to this, and the lighting is pretty important as well. Symbolically, this is Taemin's experience growing up, where his knowledge of the world was limited to his cave and the things that the industry showed him. Behind your childlike, innocent face, a frightening side of you gives me goosebumps. Taemin's childlike passion for dance becoming a powerful and painful obsession was probably something he did not expect. According to Plato, next in the cave allegory, one prisoner is freed from his bindings and looks around him. He sees people and objects that frighten him, and the fire is so bright that it blinds him. What he sees is nothing like he believed his whole life. This section in the music video is as follows. First, Taemin's red blindfold comes off and he sees several people staring into him in a really creepy way. In the choreo, Taemin falls to the ground, looking like he's in pain while the dancers dance in a circle around him. In Taemin's cave, this could be his introduction to the real world and how people around him were so different that it threatened his identity. Next, we see Taemin attempting to accept reality and reverse what he's done. Mannequin Taemin, who is dead, picks the hourglass card. Instead of choosing any of the snake cards, which would give him Ariadne, or dance, he chooses to reverse time. In the choreography, Taemin now dances alone, the dancers falling to the ground in pain. Chainmail Taemin, which we haven't really gotten into, is being arrested under blue lighting. The next scene shows him going back in time. If you look closely, he's not dying, but unsuffocating himself. His hands are leaving from around his neck. The butterflies surrounding him show that he's coming back to life. At the bridge of the song, there are several audio recordings that I couldn't quite make out, but the only thing I heard clearly was the prime suspect is the victim. Up until now, the suspect or the hunter that we have been imagining was the person trapping Taemin in the cave/labyrinth, cutting off his head, and the person in chainmail that was being arrested. It's fair to think that this was SM or the idol industry or something like that. But this line tells us that the suspect of the case is the victim, or in other words, Taemin is the suspect as well as the victim. In the cave allegory, Plato says that once the prisoner is faced with reality and blinded by the fire, he chooses to go back to his bindings because the shadows are more real to him than anything else. This next part of the MV shows Taemin choosing to go back to his narrow and skewed world of shadows. Chainmail Taemin, who represented the one creating the shadows, is now set free. Bathed in red lighting, he moves his fingers like a puppeteer. The Taemin in the mannequin shop lays on the ground, not even trying to escape. A cut of the statue's head lays on the red tablecloth, showing that his head has officially been cut off. Taemin drags a rose across his face, and symbolizes that Theseus has officially fallen for Ariadne, choosing not to escape the labyrinth, which is actually different from the myth. Remember how I said Ariadne was a really good dancer who was known for spiral dancing, which mimics the complex turns of the labyrinth? Well, in the last chorus, as you can see, Taemin is spinning almost uncontrollably, surrendering himself to his love for Ariadne, dance, fate, or any other symbols you might find. As Taemin has said, these music videos are open to interpretation and there are probably several different ways of seeing them. I'd really appreciate any feedback, good or bad, since I love reading too deep into things. And there was so much more I wanted to include in this video, but if I did, it would be way too long. Idea is even worse, so I'll be taking my time to condense those thoughts and put out a video as soon as I can. Most importantly, hats off to Taemin, the backup dancers, choreographers, directors, stylists, lyricists, literally everyone behind the scenes. You can tell that this is not the kind of project that one person does alone. It's a combination of so many people's efforts and amazing creativity. And yeah, so thank you guys for watching.
태민이가 생각하는 아이덴티티를 한마디로 표현하자면 궁금하네요 하셨습니다.